Particularly thank the speakers, but also Pat, who's put his heart and soul in this and has plagued me for the last 3 weeks. I was on my way down today. He rang me and said, "There's no room back, there's no room back." There was a bit of a mix up at the hotel, but everything was fine. It was just under the wrong name. Couple of things I wanted to say. It's just really interested in this. I started in the organic sector about 10 years ago, but funny enough, it was actually conventional dairy farmers that started me thinking about homeopathy, and we've tried to gel with Hall, and certain things happened. Our funding ran out and different things. We never really got it together. And one of the other things is, as far as I'm aware, and I'm not 100% sure, I'm going to talk to Jackie about this later on, I think you actually need to practice in farm to really do this, and sometimes that can be difficulty with insurance issues and all that. So I'm going to iron that out in the bar later on with her. Interesting enough, we are, and just so you're all now members of National Organic Training Skillnet, and you may be contacted to check that you are members, and sometimes the organic thing puts people off, but funny enough, we've got about 60% of our members are conventional farmers and 40% are organic. And the reason that is, a lot of people come to organic through training. I thought it was what Sally said there was really interesting, and you always hear the really good stuff from farmers, but what they have taken to the level of looking at the crops. There's a lot of vegetable growers in Ireland, I'd say, would be quite interested in what she's saying, especially with cabbage root fly and stuff. We're actually bringing, and she mentioned it as well, is we're having a 2-day conference. It's not organic, it's not conventional, it's both, on soil biology. And it's looking at the role of soil biology, how farmers can adapt techniques and that to reduce their, you don't have to eliminate it, to reduce their chemical fertilizer, and how they can enhance. That's coming up now in November. If anybody wants more information on it, if they haven't left me an email, they can. A couple of things though as well is we have to be careful of here, because a lot of the stuff we take in from the UK, we transpose it in as it's the same here. Tom will have more detail on this when people ask questions, but just to be aware, the legal rules around using homeopathic remedies for animals that enter the food chain is different than the UK. We just have to be careful of that, and we can go through that in a little while. So that's kind of where I am going. So for the rest of the whatever time it'll be ye asking questions. So, but it's don't ask me questions. It's these people here. So I'll try and control it as best I can. So, and I'll try and point out who take this, or you can check yourselves. So I'll open it up. Yes.
Fluke and worms, specifically in intensive systems. It was alluded to in terms of the effect of some of the traditional or conventional doses on soil biology, etc. I think there's bigger issues in the industry.
Okay, so back to that traffic light model, yeah? So we'll stand up. If that's okay. So always think about the red level first, yeah? So you're going to lose stock from fluke or from parasites, you're going to lose condition, you're going to lose money. So if your regular vet has got a conventional solution for dealing with that, then consult with them and see at least you can tick off the red level, you're addressing that. If you're organic, or you've been trying that sort of thing for years and you're only working so far, then you might think, actually, I don't want to go that way. Is there another solution? Next, always then come back down to the husbandry. And we know things like parasites, there'll be a life cycle to these parasites. And if you can come to understand the life cycle of parasites and break it, so like field rotation and so forth, then that can make a big difference. Similarly, with fluke, we know that fluke don't survive very well in dry, drained pasture, but they love sort of wet pasture. So again, recognise where the fluke is going to be most of the problem. So you look at the husbandry bit. Assuming you've done both those things, which is all you're going to do with the conventional approaches and with the husbandry approaches, then you come back to this middle bit, and then you can look safely what you can do with homeopathy. And there's no like magic bullet like remedy that you give. The approaches that our farmers tend to take, and they give us feedback about what results they've got, we tend to be looking at, say for the fluke, looking at liver support, because we know the fluke tends to go to the liver, so there'll be remedies that are relevant to support the liver generally. This concept of nosodes, where you take a remedy made from disease material, so you might get a fluke 30C remedy, so you might be giving that. And then you might also be giving remedies to support what's called the constitution, as we've been mentioned earlier on. So if you knew that there's a certain type of cow that seems to keep going down with these problems, and you can choose a remedy that suits her constitutionally, then you might give that. Parasites, like internal worms, parasites, again, once you've addressed those different levels, Ainsworth and other pharmacies I know would do like a combination worm remedy, so that would support the animal to be dealing better with this level. Does that make sense of how you put that together? So it's not going to give you, hey, give it this remedy, you'll sort it out. It's not about instant hits. It's about intelligently coming to understand what's really going on. And the stronger you can make the husbandry bit, either healthy and fit, vibrant yard, good genetics, good husbandry, good housing, good stockmanship and so on, that's going to be stronger. And then if you can empower them with the remedies, say making them even stronger still, then they're going to be much less vulnerable to getting the parasites. The way I talk to all my clients, it's always going to be the challenge relative to the ability to respond. Okay? So you've got a balance between the host, which is the cow, and the parasite coming in, whether it's a fluke or a worm coming in. And if the host vitality is strong, vibrant, then that parasite doesn't get in at all. If the host is run down for whatever reason, in whatever way, then the parasite takes hold and further weakens it. So what you're aiming to do is two things always. You're trying to empower the actual host to be as strong as possible, and you're trying to disempower the parasite challenging it. So again, that might be by proper pasturing, by drainage and all those sorts of things. That makes sense of an approach. So it's not like a one remedy answer, it's an approach. Okay?
In terms of implementing that at farm level, how effective would you think that those strategies are?
Again, farmers we work with are ones who've already tried standard veterinary ones, so they know how to do that. So assuming that it's been covered, the farmers I know who started to do this, they get good results. If you want to leave an email address afterwards, Jackie, we have one of our farmers who did a little piece on this. Yeah, it's a Scottish farmer, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And he wrote an account of his approach to how he managed his fluke. So if you let Jackie know the email address.
We do have, sorry Chris, we do have, so the support afterwards, and again, it's not, they don't have to have come on the course, it's just any farmers that are interested in homeopathy. So we have what's called as buddy farmers, who've got very experience in different areas. So for instance, we've got farmers who have success with fluke, farmers that have had success with pink eye, those who, all the different TB protocols, different ones they use. You name it, there's a farmer who's tried it or is prepared to talk about it. So if you do have a particular problem, as I said, come up and give us your details, and we'll try and put you in touch with the farmers. I think we always prefer it to be farmer to farmer, don't we, Chris? Because we think that that's where the power for you guys. We can sort of stand up here all day and say, use this, do this, the other, but it's when farmers start talking and sharing. I mean, we will all support, but...
and we never step in and tell people what to do with their husbandry, what their treatment systems. It's always the farmer's choice. So I'm not saying, what you need to do is this, and you'll be fine. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you start thinking about it with this sort of strategy, then you have the possibility to come in there. So we come in from a teaching point of view rather than telling you and prescribing point of view. Okay.
Just an aside on that, Sean, years ago you supported me over a lot of the talks I've done, and I did a talk up in Mosinver on just homeopathy. It was a 2-day weekend just on homeopathy with farmers. And one of the interesting things that I learned on that was that they were having another SkillNet course there on management of land and drainage and all of this. And it was on that course this guy turned around to me and he said, I heard this question about fluke. Is he growing ash trees? Or willow trees, sorry, excuse me. And I sort of said, what do you mean? He said, willow tree reduces the snail who causes fluke. And he said, and this was one of your courses that this guy was teaching, and I was sitting there, I spent the entire lunch hour grilling this guy for ideas. So there's lots of stuff out there that comes with this that other people have tried. And I think, if you know somebody in the west of Ireland, I can tell you, if they can grow animals without fluke, really that's just impressive. And it's one of the things that you find, and certainly one of the remedies that I found very useful, as you say, all the liver remedies. But Lux Vomica is one of the liver remedies that I found extremely useful. It's often forgotten as a remedy for fluke, but it really does help them in that situation. And it's not by any means the one remedy. Remember, we've lots of remedies, and each of them will be different. But it's just to remember that there are ways, and lots of different ways into this. And as I say, seen a lot of them, so I've asked a lot of questions. And once again, it's farmer to farmer. I mean, at this stage, there's so much more that Pat knows about animals in a way that I don't. You know, I throw out advice to him, and he says, didn't work. You know, sort of, this is my problem, this is what the animal looks like. And it's very important. Vets, and there are quite a few vets here, there's Philip Lutz, you know, there's Michael Clancy, Clem, you know, and these are vets who have homeopathic training, who know how to help you, and it's to use them. They've got a great knowledge of medicine, and not just homeopathic medicine. They're also there to help. I mean, Pat rings me up occasionally, I said, have you got the conventional vet to look at it? You know, it's really important not to be blind to anything. And there are other times where I say to Pat, why didn't you contact me? You know, I mean, that's real homeopathy territory. And the next time he knows straight off to ring and sort of say, look, you have something in this field. And so often those other remedies like Ignatia, and there are so many of them, you know, that we just need to know. And to me, Ignatia, the one word you need to know about it is emotional. If it's emotional, Ignatia is just incredible. You know, aconite is those situations where there is fear. It's just any type of it. So it's just, you know, and those simple words can teach you a mountain. Sorry, go on.
Just listening to Sally earlier on and listening to her different
She's hiding behind it.
Sally, come down here now, stop
Sally,
it.
come on.
Beat you with a big stick.
I'm just wondering, and I think Chris said it earlier on, we look at things, or someone said it earlier on, we look at things, you're looking at things inside out and upside down. And at the moment, what the main discussion is about curing diseases within animals using homeopathy. And I'm just thinking about what Sally was saying earlier on about her journey. Are we looking at how we manage our land and our animals in the wrong way? Are we missing something? And I think what Sally is doing is looking at frequency. She's going into the whole area of frequency. And she's going into the area of understanding, you know, using power towers and the various preparations that are being used and recommended. Is it a case that they are introducing into the animal a particular frequency, and as a result of that, the animal begins to respond from that frequency?
How I look at it is that everything has an energy, and I feel homeopathic remedies are energies, and so you're just giving the animal an energy that it needs to make it fight its own problem, because the body will heal, and all you're doing is giving it a kickstart, if you like. I don't know. I'm a bit, you know, out there with it at the moment, so.
And the other thing is the soil.
Still on my journey, I think.
The other thing is the soil. Where does everything come from? Where does everything start?
Yes.
It's in the soil.
That's where I started.
Why do our animals get different diseases? Why do the immune system go down? Because the nutrients are not in the plant. The vitality is not in the grass or in the various forage that they get.
Yeah, but I feel that we've sapped it all out, haven't we, over the years with these fertilisers.
Exactly.
And we haven't replaced the nutrients. That's where I feel the paragmagnetic rock dust is coming in.
Yeah.
That's got 98 different trace elements and minerals in it. So we're putting that back on now. And we've got one elderly gentleman who sells rock dust from Bilthwells, actually. He's doing research on why tomatoes don't taste the same anymore. They're just watery. And he feels it's because all the nutrients have gone and we're just eating water tomatoes instead of, You know, that,
And
that's,
yeah.
you know.
And that's
just-
my soil biology conference.
Yeah. sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to keep
Sorry,
it here.
sorry.
Sorry, it's not here.
Yeah, this is not so much a question, but I'd like any member of the group to address it, you know. It'd be my own opinions. Okay, so I think energetically, when we talk about homeopathy or whatever, or when we talk about farming, the word farming itself is actually a negative title to have on what we're actually doing, because farming means stripping, taking from. So there's a few nice words used tonight here, like husbandry, care for livestock. That's a word that's sort of lost with our farming modalities. Now we are talking about a lot of specifics about animals and sometimes about crops, and it was nice when you mentioned about the willow tree. Like, we actually have inherited, it was said one time, both Ireland and England, a squirrel could hop from one side of the country to the other. So we've actually, the past couple of 1,000 years, have farmed our land, the detriment that we're probably now facing. Now, what worries me, it's fine to have farms and be looking after animals and all this, but we still are on this path of destruction of actually we're still farming the land. And looking at the picture there of the alpacas, it was clear to see that they were totally out of their environment. But when I look at farms today and I see fences stripped down, no trees on the farms, no bushes, no forest bushes, we are also losing that aspect of our farms. And the cow in particular needs trees. She likes to be in trees, winter time, summertime or whatever. So I'd like, that's my own opinion on what's happening with farming. I think what you're doing here as a group, and I thank Pat for bringing these people here tonight. I've been doing this with probably over 20 years now, but I'm only a hobby farmer. So, and but I think that yeah, and Sally, I have a daughter, Sally, as well. So she's opened my mind, and you're opening my mind as well. So when you talk about being opening our minds to all these things, this is really where we need to go, and it's wonderful to have this here tonight. So
thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, go back to the warming, 2 steps. John Sexton in the veterinary course, and I did in the UK, always says, as regards worm dosing, in addition to husbandry, give a worm dose first of conventional worm dose, and then give Tony's complex. What do you think of that?
Yes, I quite often use that approach. In the UK, we have a company called Worm Count. I don't know if they work over here or it's an equivalent. And for a lot of clients, I'll say either just do a blanket worming to get rid of them, or actually do a worm test to see how good or bad the actual situation is, and then you can base your strategy on that. As I said earlier on, there's no silver bullet, there's no one size fits all. It's about thinking intelligently about what are the different components so that you can actually apply it together.
I think his point might well be that the complex might be good enough to get rid of a big worm dose. So give a conventional dose first and then follow with the complex.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I think, again, depends on how bad the threat is. If you have an animal that's in very poor condition because of the worm burden, you might need to deal with that conventionally. If it's on the borderline, you might find actually the holistic approaches seem to do the trick. But certainly once you've cleared that conventional thing, really look at the husbandry, really look at the life cycles and what you're doing with the management, and then look at what remedies might do with that. So it's that combination of things all together.
This man here.
Hi, yeah, I'm in a strange position because I actually manufacture the remedies, and I work with about 3,000 UK farmers, and just tying something together with the no-said approach and also bringing in what you just said. The no-says and homeopathy needs to be understood that it can only generate an innate response that the cow or the herd is capable of producing. So, for example, with worms, with intestinal worms, you're making the worm, the host, less hospitable. So therefore, you get an evacuation of intestinal worms. When it comes to lungworms, the only mechanism for removing those is by coughing. And if that doesn't work, then you're going to die of an overload of worms. And we did some trials with this, and it was an unfortunate reaction. So you do need to have a vermifuge in cases like that, because the body can't physically kill a lungworm. But with nosodes generally, and this is really significant, you actually need to have the presence of the organism, and it's there in the soil, in order for the nosode to actually work. So for example, if you want to use a nosode for prevention of mastitis or tuberculosis or ringworm or cryptosporidium, all of which I've done over the years, provided you can map out a seasonal pattern of using these simply by saying, can I preempt the problem that's coming down line by, say, 3 weeks, or which you're going to use in a high stress situation, and then the farmer can put that into the water trough, and they can have a very simple system of prevention without knowing a huge amounts about the subject, and then they can go on to learn about the individual remedies at a later stage. But the nosode will work nicely, picking up from what Tom said, for both prevention and the very early stages of treatment.
Before I move on to this lady, I want to ask, does everybody understand what a nosode is? Anybody that doesn't? Okay, I'm the only one, so. So I just marked it.
We'll give you a private
yeah, sorry, this lady.
I'm just curious, but Tom, which way is the legal situation in Ireland at the moment?
Okay.
No, we're going to say this from a livestock, I take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really matter. We'll leave the human situation out of it. The veterinary situation is that the human end of homeopathy wanted to be recognised on a similar level to human medicine. So there was a lot of effort to do this, went through the EU and all of that. And somebody in the EU decided, okay, to satisfy them, we will stick in the legislation, for the purpose of legislation, homeopathy will be treated as a medicine. Nobody had any idea of the consequences of that down the road. Because here was this little bit in the legislation, and when you look at medicine, medicine requires pharmacology, which means knowing how the drug works. It has toxicology, knowing the toxicology. And immediately homeopathy to pass a homeopathic medicine was impossible. Because you can pour all of it you want into an animal, you're never going to kill it. So when we went back originally to the drug authority and we said, look, we can't, well, you have to do toxicology. Everything will kill, but homeopathy doesn't, no matter how much you give. So there were hurdles that came with this that nobody realized. Consequently, there then started to be this negotiation and legislation. And down the road, one of the problems that came up with this was trace and residue. And in Ireland, Ireland has an extremely high worldwide status. And consequently, trace and residue. So if somebody used an antibiotic, we need to know that the animal is free of it so we can sell at the premium in the market. And the department said, well, how do we know that that homeopathy is not having an effect? And this was a question that nobody could answer because nobody could trace what homeopathy was actually doing. So consequently, the department said, look, the only way to do this is to make it traceable. So you as a vet, and all these vets will know it, you have to record the batch number, the homeopathic, who you sold it to, where it went, and then if something happens down the road, the department can trace this back. And this is where this whole situation arose as to what's going to happen in Ireland. It was because of our very high status worldwide. And consequently, the department sort of said, look, the only way you can do this is trace back. And we're going to make vets the point of this, and we're only going to allow homeopathics that are registered. Now that opened a whole new can of worms, because there are now four registered homeopathics in Ireland. Just four. There are the three that Galway Homeopathic sell, and one that my brother's company in the United States sells, which is a small animal treatment. And those are the four registered homeopathic medicines. And of those, the only one that totally complies with the legislation is my brother's company, because that was put through toxicology, bacteriology, the whole works, to make it fully compliant with legislation.
So can I just interrupt you there for a second? So basically what you're saying is, if I have my, veil of illiterates and I have a Borgia inspection, I just hide it and that's it.
Yeah, I'm going to get more into that in a second, because for me, people like Pat contact me, they get the remedy through me. I have to show traceability from a pharmacy in the UK if it's not available here, right? I have to show that it comes from a pharmacy, that it is batch number, registration, that it complies with certification. And certification is the original material used to it. It's a very complicated, large process that the pharmacies do on our behalf, and really doesn't actually pay them when you work out the work that's involved. And I have seen this, because my brother's company produces and sells all over the world, right? When he sources a remedy, they have to go right back to the farm that produced that remedy, right? And trace that back, and it has to be tested for toxins in that. Were there toxins in it? Even though it's going to be diluted out, but it has to match. And for example, the one thing that was discovered in the middle of all this is that the plant pulsatilla is different in America to the plant pulsatilla in Europe. So we actually use two different remedies. We call them the same name, but they are different. So in terms of this, it gets very complicated, but the bottom line is that through vets, remedies are available and there is traceback on them, right? If you end up with a remedy, human remedy, or given a remedy by a human homeopath, right? Technically speaking, you certainly don't declare that. You have to take the remedy, use it. And the situation with Pat, when I said to him, look, he's got this cow that's really sick. By the time he's just got back, by the time he'd be out to me to get remedy and back, his cow could have been finished. So he had remedy left, it was certified remedy, and I said, just use that. And in essence, a lot of my farmers will have extra remedy, because as Sally so aptly described, you often use a lot less than is in the bottle. And that sits there, and once again, under supervision, technically supervision, that's the situation with the department. And the department sit with that to a point. But their worry is down the road. The example of what happened in the equine industry here is where somebody brought a remedy in, it was contaminated, and boy, there were a lot of sick horses in this country that never particularly hit the headlines. They were all put down because that one remedy came in and there was no traceback. It was discovered and the problem started to spread. Who gave it? Where did they get it? And it provided the department with a lot of headache. So the problem is, if a contaminated remedy comes in, they need to know where to look for it.
Can I just, one thing, I do know the legal scenario in Germany, because I did actually a homeopathic course there 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And basically, it was the same bottom line, you can't give human ones, animal ones, and I think there's a couple of ones available now, they were just bringing them out.
Yeah.
But it was actually possible there for your normal vet, say you were a registered vet, you could, to actually give the certification in your, the normal human remedies, that you could just carry in it, and it was literally saying this is now for animal use rather than for human use, and that was all it was, and it was legal.
Yeah. Here the problem is the availability, because you're going to be bringing them into the country, because there is no domestic producer on a large scale. In Germany you have GHU and you have companies who produce all the remedies. That's not the issue. In Ireland, they're going to have to be brought in no matter where you get them from, whether it's England, whether it's France, whether it's Germany, they're being brought into the country, and that's where the department's problem is with it. But they do not have an issue in terms of if a vet takes a remedy, all the remedies we get are human. That's not the issue. The issue is traceback and that it is the right remedy. So, but any vet, you know, it doesn't have to be a homeopathically trained vet, can prescribe the remedy. Homeopathic vets will actually know what to do with it and what to advise, like when you come in and sort of say, well, I'm looking for cauliflorin, and what do you want it for? Well, if a cow who's not eating, and you're not going to do that because you already know, but somebody comes in, the homeopathic vet says, why do you want cauliflorin? You know, or sorry, cow with cystitis, right? Why do you want cauliflorin? Well, it's a C remedy, I know that, I'm fairly sure it's cauliflorin, well, actually it's cancerous, you know, and that's the advantage with homeopathic vets, is there's that knowledge behind that they can give. And there are quite a few vets out there who have homeopathic training who don't actually declare it at all. I mean, there are quite a few vets in Ireland who've trained in Germany, trained in Poland. They're here, they already have a large knowledge of homeopathy, and yet they work as conventional vets. So it's just to be aware, you know, that if you approach your vet, very often they will know who to contact. And I mean, many of the vets will say, well, sure, look, I'll give Lutz a ring, or I'll give Philip a ring, I'll just find out what to give. So it's not that big an issue, but it is important when the department comes in and sees your bottle of arnica sitting there, and they're going to say, where did you get that? Oh, that's for the family. You know, it's not for the cattle. But if they find a bottle and it's not traceable back, they're going to knock you. They will probably rap you on the knuckles. For us, they will probably kick us in the cheek, because we're supposed to know what to do and how to comply with the law. Initially, you get a warning. After that, now, if the remedy, if they're worried that it's contaminated, and many of the vets here know my experience where my brother sent me a gift. I didn't know about it until I got a letter from the department who said, you have a choice to make today, literally, €100,000 fine or 3 years in jail. And that was the succinct thing of the letter. And I rang the department and said, you know, what the hell is this about? You know, and they said, well, you're in contravention of the law, you're a vet. And I said, look, what caused all this? He said, well, you ordered remedy in. And it came from the United States, and it's in Portlaoise office, and it was notified to us that it's there. And I'm saying, I didn't order remedy. I said, well, it came in from the United States. It's not certified. There's nothing about it. And it took quite a while to work out. My brother had been at a show in the United States, so I love these. I'll get some and send them to him. And suddenly, here I am, sort of faced with the Department of Agriculture, who want to keep me in jail. And at this stage, they'd already taken proceedings against me. You know, and when I rang them, explained what was happening, I said, look, contact my brother. This has nothing to do with me. Didn't even know they were coming. So my brother said, send them back. To which they said, no, they're on Irish soil. They have to be destroyed. So